Hello everyone, my name is Stonesy Boy and welcome back to Reading with Stonesy. Today we are reading pages 143 to 162 and chapters 27 to 32. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. And without further ado and slapping a gnat that's on my ear, ow, let's begin. Chapter 27. The jackal always liked a preparation prior of an abduction or murder. The planning built anticipation. It juiced his veins and electrified his heart. It allowed him to visualize how he'd carry out the plan, and what he would do to the unfortunate once he had her. It never failed to give a rise in a painful erection. Despite their planning, he'd been lucky with Jen. If she had pushed the stupid alarm button any sooner, he might be in jail right now, rotting in a cage. He had no idea she was wearing the alarm. He should have known. He had never seen Olivia wearing it, so, in retrospect, he would have foreseen that. Relying on luck was a terrible way to do business. Luck of a disturbing tendency of running out. More research, more planning. One had to be careful about the process. It wouldn't do to see hanging around the certain place around a certain person. People remember the strangest things, and she shouldn't underestimate that. Jen's murder had sated him for some time. He wished he could have taken her with him to enjoy it at his leisure. Draw her terror and drink it in. A satisfying tonic. When Jen had given him a satisfaction she sought, curious, he had been dissociating herself with quite some time. With her pink cell, he sensed in her eyes drawing away, her mind drifting someplace where the horrors couldn't reach her. Even at the moment of her death, when her eyes grew wide on dinner plates and pulsing with fear, she had been tempered by relief. She wanted it to end and enticed him to do it. He didn't like that. He had manipulated him. Control belonged to the jackal, not the victim. He shrugged it away. It was something to learn and move on. She had killed her and left an unmistakable message for Olivia. He intended to do the same with Lucy. He had to get a way to negate the alarm around the neck. He would have to test it first, make sure it worked. Then he would take her, use her, and dump her where she would not be found. Bearing the same disfiguring scars as Olivia, his penis pressed against his pants, painfully pleasant. He had recorded the interviews Lucy gave to the talk shows. He watched her on the screen, vibrant, full of life, so different from Jen. His heart ached with want. Although Jen bore more resemblance to Olivia, Lucy possessed her spirit more defiance. He loved to beat that out of him first, all except for Olivia. He never beat her. He did not help hold her down so Sean could cut pieces of her away, but he never had one to hit or cut. He would get to Olivia. It was inevitable of the Earth's orbiting the sun. He had been kidding himself that he thought he would let her go. He would take her in every way possible and destroy her. He groaned in his chair at the thought of under him. Once he took Lucy, the security would be intense around Olivia. Maybe it wouldn't go away, like he knew it had with Jen. With the surveillance, he knew the police were already losing interest in parking around Lucy and Olivia. She was surprised when he saw the old sign of Olivia's old house. He hadn't known they were selling it, and had no idea they would be moving, or to where. It didn't take much effort to find out, and when he did, he saw the police were already in the area. But after the time, the patrols past the home were occurring less and less. They didn't have the time or resources to keep up with the sustained watch. If he looked, Lucy might change all of that. They might hide Olivia from him. He had his ways to find her through penetrating the security while maintaining the anonymity. Would all be impossible. He would have to reevaluate his plans of talking to Lucy or Olivia. If he waited a little while longer, maybe he could figure out a way of getting them both at the same time and end his longing. He tossed himself through his pants and watched Lucy's interview on the TV. Lucy smiled on the screen as it was like he was smiling at him. A dazzling symbol of youth and beauty. He might cut her lips off first. Something so powerful about destroying a beautiful thing, and all it took was a knife and the will to do it. He undid his pants. He needed some release. Chapter 28. Detective Davis stared at the chart of the wall of the office at home. It contained photos and small notes of the case referencing page numbers in the major case file, heavier than an Old Testament Bible. Sitting in the corner of his desk, he liked to have a paper copy as well as an electronic one on his computer. His gaze roved all over all. Trying to get something he missed. Frustrating his case, it kept him up some nights, morose and sullen. Feared like it was an unintelligent slob. The stress accumulated on his shoulders. The pressure from outside was beginning to wear on him. The press, his bosses, the public, Lucy and Olivia were all looking to him to solve the thing that they couldn't stop worrying about. His saw Jen's death as a huge stain, questioning the police's ability to deal with the matter. All the reporter pundits offered their own insight and criticism on how the police would be doing their job better. The stress from them didn't bother him. His boss would repeat the words and phrases like public presentation and optics, as though he were the most important considerations in the world. Davis didn't give a fuck about that, and didn't feel the pressure of their words, and stern gazes they were meant to give. Davis understood public precipitation and importance of it. Police derive their powers from the public support them. So yeah, they were definitely accountable for the public, and should be. His bosses were politician words. It didn't apply to pressure. The pressure came from himself. To Davis, stress was internal to a certain extent. We control our reactions to outside extents to dictate how to affect us. Sometimes that isn't true. Sometimes an outside trauma is so horrific against our own belief of reality. It gets inside, churns about, and consumes you from within. Not quite a stage. Davis would feel it growing, from an impending menace, hurtling towards that cage. Davis could feel it growing, an impending menace, hurtling towards him. His stress came from the death of Jen and her mother. Based on all what he knew in the investigation, reading reports, reviewing interviews, how could he not anticipate the jackal going after her, or any of them? Could he have foreseen it? No, he would have survivors to protect themselves, and would have had precautions, because that's what you're supposed to say when a bad guy gets away. But he didn't believe in the bad guy would come back. The bad guy who took great pains not to get caught and identified, so Davis didn't think he would show up again. He thought the jackal was gone, like all the other guys. He thought the jackal upped and vanished, never to be seen again around there. To go after any of the girls and went against the premises, and one believed he could do it. Davis believed that he would act again, somewhere new, in town, far away, but there was no way he believed for a second he would go after Jen. Suicidal to do so. He was almost begging to be caught. But he didn't get caught, did he? He walked into her house, murdered by her mother, and killed and mutilated Jen left without a trace. No witness. Nothing. Intelligence officers were watching both the girls now. At first, they had been there 24 hours a day in rotating shifts. The cost of the surveillance mounted fast, so it had been reduced to 12-hour shifts. The bosses had been considering pulling it all together if this doesn't get wrapped up soon. They were convincing themselves the attack on Jen was a prudent, vengeful act. Sad truth of the matter was about money dictated so much in policing. They wanted to believe the jackal got out of their system and would leave the other girls alone. The jackal would have been insane and continue the attacks and not get caught. Davis believed otherwise. Didn't the jackal's acts prove its insanity? After Jen, Davis knew the jackal would be going away. He would be waiting for his opportunity. The jackal had other girls to kill, and Davis felt certain Olivia would be the last one. His arrogance is too large for him to let Olivia and Lucy go. Davis vanished as he'd been deduced that before Jen was murdered, he would get the brass pull surveillance. Not before he found the bastard. Olivia was the key to it all. He felt it in his gut. He had interviewed all her teachers from high school and all her friends. He questioned her fellow workers and her boss at the recreation center and got nothing. He got a good idea of Olivia as a person before the abduction. For all accounts, they described her as a kind, conscious person. Nice sentiments, but not very helpful. None of those would lead to Davis to the jackal. He appeared to be an investigated dead end. When he and his team worked in every angle, did Sean agree to get the money to buy the little terror house. They traced it back and got nothing more than accounts owned by Sean. The jackal used Sean with incredible skill. Hiding behind him had become all but invisible. It was clear the jackal possessed better than average financial resources, but where to start based on that? The creeper at the pool, the guy who didn't show up at the university night Olivia had been taken, needed to be found. Security video? Long but erased. He had spoken to almost all Olivia's co-workers and learned nothing helpful. He requested the recreation center provide him a list of all people registered for the use of facilities during the time Olivia worked there. Over 5-year-old records. No one he spoke to knew where they had been kept or who kept them. He assigned one of the junior officers the task. As far as he knew, she was still working on it. He would have to go through the list and see if anyone remembered the vague description of mail provided by Olivia, who had last seen the guy over 5 years ago. Fuck my life, he thought. He scanned the wall, looking for something. Anything to give him a place to start. He couldn't fail Lucy and Olivia like he did Jen. They had been through more than enough to last them 2 lifelines. He smiled, thinking of Olivia, that incredible will, to bite into a person's neck, break into a cell he had been in for 5 years. Instead of running off screaming tonight, she rescued 2 other girls. Amazing. He liked her. A lot. Only she, the victim, and the witness had been hands off. Wasn't professional to start dating a victim of the crime you're investigating. Maybe after it was all over? Shit. Like she would be interested in some old guy like him. Well, he wasn't that old. He was maybe 5 years older than her. That's not so bad. Jesus, stop being such a moon-eyed teenager. Focus on catching the jackal. After that, who knows? Maybe he should call her. He didn't give her an update on the investigation in a while. The thought made him smile, and he looked his head, thinking, be professional. It was a courtesy call. You told her you would call on a weekly basis. You're fulfilling the obligation. Yeah, right. He called her, and when he heard her voice, he couldn't help but grin. Chapter 29. Olivia learned to relax. Brutus taught her how. The routine arose without contemplation. He would wake up with Brutus, loud, groan, yawn, and follow to the bedroom, leaving the indentation behind of his dog bed. He would sit by the food bowl, eyes following Harry and Olivia as they worked on coffee and breakfast. She would feed him and let him in the backyard, not as concerned as the shadows as before. He sat at the door, then wandered back in. He would wait and stay near her for the rest of the day, wherever she happened to be. He sat close by, and her hand would stray and scratch behind his ear. He loved him immediately, and Olivia felt loved by Brutus. Harry tolerated Brutus for Olivia's sake, and his fear dissipated from the constant exposure. If Brutus barked or growled, it would have been harder on him to cope. Hell, if the dog barked, Harry might have screamed or crapped himself. If it came to that, he was sure he'd rather be a former. Harry thought a dog must be sensitive to discomfort, because for the most part, Brutus gave him space. He never sat between Olivia and Harry, even though he was always remaining close to Olivia's side. It got harder for Harry to dislike the dog. A grudging respect for Brutus grew because of his effect on Olivia was noticeable. Before, even in the reclining state, Olivia wore a worried frown and searching eyes. With Brutus around, her features smoothed out, and it seemed like she breathed easier. After a week, Olivia convinced Harry to go outside with her to take a walk for Brutus for a walk. A big step for Harry and Olivia. Even though she went to the AA meetings with Harry and the dog shelter to get Brutus, he preferred to stay inside for her to not want to go out for a walk at the block or wherever there was a sign of her healing. He did his best to keep clear of Brutus in the house, and now Olivia wanted him to walk the dog's side. Well, maybe he could walk on the other side of Olivia, further from Brutus. Still, the idea lifted his hand and swiped his upper lip. Harry wanted to see his daughter go outside, but it would be nice to see her grow confidence and venture away from the house, and who knows, after a while, she may go on without him. For that reason, he couldn't say no to the dog walks after dinner. He would feel like a bad parent to deny her a simple request. He wanted to walk Brutus every day, but was still at the point of being fearful outside world without someone by her side. While talking with Olivia, he kept a wary eye on Brutus. Brutus, for his part, ignored Harry. He never pulled on the leash and yanked her on the side to investigate a smell. He would pause and glance at Olivia, and he sensed something she wanted to investigate, and if he noticed this, she would let him lead her in what nose found so interesting. Brutus plodded beside her, nudging her on occasion to invite a pet, or, if that didn't work, he licked her hand. She sniffed the other dogs and allowed them to smell him in calm acceptance. All in all, Harry grudgingly admitted to himself Brutus was an exceptional dog. Olivia loved the walks. She would feel her tight back muscles loosen. She checked over her shoulder less and less. She would watch the rolling shoulders and hips of Brutus when she walked, mouth open, his tongue swinging out like a flag, and wondered if she ever get to the point where she could enjoy the moment without a weight in the past and present shadow of the jackal. They walked every night after dinner, sometimes making their way to Starbucks or Tim Hortons in a fashion. They walked out of the winter and into the spring. The air lost its chill. The cold breezes sliding down her neck became warmer, and the winter coats were replaced by lighter jackets. She and Harry talked about the house and marked the transformation under the hands of Frank and Carl. Dale's contribution included breaking drywall, screwing in boards lopsided, and causing Frank constant aggravation. At Frank's angry-eyed request, Dale stopped helping and provided Olivia with company. They spent many afternoons sipping tea and coffee while Frank and Carl worked around them. Frank showed up almost every day with surprised Olivia until Frank told her he wanted to get it over with and move on. The house began to take shape. Carl spent a lot of time there as well with the insistence of Dale and his wife, Angela. Frank was the only one who outwardly disliked Brutus. He walked in after that, had him for 3 days, carrying a toolbox in his hand and setting it on the floor. Brutus left Olivia to see who walked in. He sat in the hallway, his head centered to the side. Frank noticed him as he took off his coat. Carl crowded in behind him, peering over Frank's shoulders. Brutus growled. Olivia? Yeah, there's a growling dog in your house. His name is Brutus. Say hi. But it's a dog. Olivia appeared by Brutus and scratched him behind the ears. Yeah, I know. He's my dog. I don't like him. Olivia said. You don't have to. How am I going to get any work done if that is around? He won't get in your way. He hangs out with me exclusively. What does Harry have to say about you having a dog? He doesn't know. I have him in my room where he gets back to work. Really? No, Jazz. He's fine with him. Huh? I'd like to see that. Stick around and dinner sometime and you will. Frank turned to Carl and said, Can you believe this nonsense? Do you like dogs? I don't like or dislike them. Way to take a stand there, Carl. Carl shrugged. Frank sneered at Brutus and disappeared with the tools in another room. The only time Brutus growled was when a stranger walked by the house and when Frank or Carl showed up. Even after a few weeks, Brutus would greet them at the door with a growl and then saunter back to Olivia's side. She had heard Frank mutter once that Brutus growled. Yeah, well, I don't like you either. Olivia smiled. Carl attempted to pat the dog's head and Brutus rebuffed him by baring his teeth. Olivia thought it was nice of him to try, which was more than Frank ever did. Olivia constantly blew. Brutus' quiet demeanor and constant presence soothed the turbulence inside. The noise outside the house no longer startled a sweat from her and caused her to gasp. The nighttime shadows lost some of their menace. He loved nothing better than to sit on the couch. A blanket wrapped her legs and with the tea in her hand, a book in the other, and Brutus beside her. He would pet him, taking comfort in the soft fur and rise and fall back under her hand. For the first time in forever, she thought of the future. She contemplated registering for online courses and getting her bachelor's degree, what she had been starting to do so long ago. Davis called every Sunday evening. He counted on his calls. She sensed genuine concern for her, and the professional conversation tinged with a flirtatious tone. It boosted her self-esteem. He was somewhat as attractive as a detective could be, like her scared and mangled self. There was hope for her. She would never have explained to him what happened or even talk about it if he didn't want to, because he already knew. Maybe he was being carried away here. It's his job to care, she thought. And besides, you look like an ogre. Davis is showing professional courtesy, and that's all. He hated it when those old thoughts surfaced. Habits she forged in the pink dungeon where the questioning were worth, and believed the cruel comments of her tormentors. She stuffed them down. She remembered that pale attention felt like in those long ago days prior to living in a pink prison. She knew what flirting was. She had once been the master of it. Detective Davis definitely flirted with her on the phone. Yeah, definitely. She smiled, thinking that she didn't even know his first name. That afternoon, she sat on the porch in the backyard, the sun hurting her skin. She turned her face up to it. Brutus investigated smells along the fence, his tail wagging like a flag in the wind. The sound of Carl or Frank. She didn't know who and didn't care much at this point. Working on the closest to their bedroom would be heard through the open window. Summer arrived and she intended to take advantage of it. In a month, when the short season and hot weather arrived, she would be sipping lemonade from a glass sweaty with ice. By then, the work on his house should be done and she could take a break from both of the men. They worked on it so much as they could both say they weren't getting paid for it. She shouldn't be too annoyed with them. She spent most of the 5 years being alone, and even though they were free, would walk to whoever she wanted to. He preferred the solitude, strange before the captivity. She had been quite the extrovert. Olivia marveled at the work done to the house. Frank and Carl had taken down a wall, put a support beam, and opened up the entire first floor. She could see the living room, dining room, and down the hallway to the bedrooms. From the kitchen, bright and airy, very different from when they moved in. And every room needed a light to remove the corner shadows. Even during the day, the house would be dark before they had gone to work. In Olivia's opinion, they did good work. It was hard to get used to having them around all the time. When was they wanted was to be alone with Brutus. Carl wasn't so bad. He kept to himself. But Frank? He was the type of person you could take in small doses. With luck, he would be gone soon enough. Glorious sunlight induced lethargy, and she felt herself drifting until Brutus growled beside her. He cracked open an eye. Brutus sat staring at something behind her. Fierce fingered played around her chin. She craned her neck. Frank stood in the doorway, looking at the fence. Need anything, Frank? You want to drink something? No, just taking a break. Check out the backyard. She turned her back to face a green space, peppered with mounds of dog crap. She took back that up soon, before he and Harry started sitting out there more regular. What about Carl? He thirsty or hungry? I don't know. Why don't you ask him? I'll do that. She stood and stretched. Brutus growled beside her. Chapter 30. When the jackal noticed the undercover officers, he made his butt pucker up tighter than a drum. What was worse than the cop was the damn dog Olivia had adopted. A German Shepherd, no less. One mean-ass dog and reputedly loyal and protective of their owner. He had been on his way to see her every time he had learned something new, causing him to revise his plan and consider abandoning the whole idea of double abduction. The dog had been the newest wrinkle. He had been thinking of the dog and what to do about it. Concerns of the police had long since vanished since he noticed they no longer patrolled by her, or Lucy's place. He thought it would be safe. Driving towards her house on the side of the street, he slowed the car, approaching the stop sign. He noticed a blue sedan parked against the curb. He had to straddle the middle of the road to safely pass it. Glancing inside, he saw a man playing on an iPad. Nothing too unusual there. He turned his gaze back to the road when his head snapped back, his eyes catching the shape of a police radio in the seat beside him. He forced his eyes forward and stomped on the brake, realizing he almost driven right through the intersection without stopping the sign. In the rear view, the cop lifted his head and then returned to the iPad in his lap. Jackal drove on. The cops were still watching Olivia. That man was definitely a cop. He thought they had vanished. Surveillance costs a lot to maintain, indefinitely. If that's what they thought they did to do after Jen, it might be cheaper than to put him in the witness protection. He couldn't see any Lucy agreeing to that. Too independent and proud. He wondered what Olivia would do. Would they even offer it to them? He would have considered the possibility of undercover surveillance. To be fair to himself, he didn't consider it, but believed it to be abandoned by now. It had been a few months since the murder of Jen. When did they pull it? Even though they had become more famous than Bernardo, he'd ever thought fame, anonymity secured longevity, and he had enjoyed the years when no one even suspected little people like he and Grady existed. Now the secret was out, and the jackal was synonymous with the boogeyman. A feeling of pride bloomed in his chest. He liked being recognized for his work, but not enough to get caught. Hell no. The fact that the police presence scared him, and he didn't even like being scared. He was the scary one, the jackal, the cannibal prince. His fear turned to anger, and he bared his teeth like an animal, backed into the corner. Did they know who they were messing with? He already made him look like fools with Jen and her mother. He would do it again. He would just have to exercise patience. He would wait for the surveillance to be terminated. Then he would swoop in, steal them into the right under their noses. He would watch the news about it as he carved into Jen and so would Olivia. He could do it without finding out who he is. He had been working hard on his plan, ironing out every wrinkle and thinking through the contingency. He had found everything he needed on the internet. Amazing that one could find out there. He brought a prepaid credit card with cash and had items spent for P.O. Box, which was under a different name. He created lawyers of obscurity with ease, but his plan had been hinged by the police being out. He would have to hold it off a little longer, maybe near the end of summer, and hopefully by then, the police would have relaxed and let their guard down. It would make it easy for him to don the mask and create a night of terror for the girls and the delicious memories of himself. He would have liked to keep them someplace safe for some time before he killed them. He would like to toy with them he had some time before he killed them. He would like to toy with them like he had before. He wanted to snuff out the hope in their eyes over days, weeks, and years. He didn't have the room or a place to keep them anymore. No Sean Grady to act as a straw man. What he was going to do was risky enough to keep him like he did before, an invading disaster. One night would do it. He could destroy them both, hide their bodies, and the police would be no busy looking for them. They would spend less time looking for him. So he hoped, either way, he would get Olivia out of the system and show Lucy there was no escape from him. Only a short reparative. Remembering Jen's terror calmed his quivering heart. The adrenaline drained from his system. His hands shook at the steering wheel and steadied his breathing. He would have to Olivia and Lucy. Planning, preparation, and patience could ensure it. It would be well worth it when he could play with Lucy and Olivia minus his mask. Especially Olivia. He pressed play on his iPod and relaxed to Anna Maria, the song he and Olivia shared. He turned it up and drove away from Olivia's. He would see her soon enough. Chapter 31. Harry could not believe the change in Olivia. He'd gotten used to the Olivia who clawed her way out of the basement, a wild-eyed person frightened by the errant noise and passing shadow, a young woman who cowered in her own home, believing the horror would visit her again, expecting it to descend on her any second, caressing the knife on the belt while her eyes forever roved. Never resting, never feeling safe. She skirted the house when shoulders hunched and bent as though anticipating a beating at any moment. It hurt him to see her so damaged. He feared she may never recover, the bright, confident, and considerate young woman who left for university and never returned. They did taken that from her, and she wasn't sure she would ever go back to it. She had proven to be a fighter, but Harry had known that before all this mess. She had always been strong and very stubborn. She didn't know quitting on her, and even though she struggled adjusting to her new life, she made plans and thought of the future. She got him to stop drinking. She got him into a nice place closer to his work. Near the police station, he got herself a dog, incredibly resilient, his daughter. He would have to give credit Brutus for the change in the demeanor. They were perfect for each other, such contemplating the other's insecurities and imbibing confidence as a result. He never strayed far from her side, watching her to amp her eyes and licking her hand at every opportunity. The only time he went off her side was to do business in the backyard. He would sniff along the fence looking for a place to pausing to look back at her, as though to make sure he hadn't left him. Harry wondered about Brutus. Did he understand the first family abandoned him? Is this why he appeared concerned as Olivia's whereabouts? In contemplation of Brutus' calm and conscious demeanor, Harry's fear of the dog receded. He was getting used to the dog, and against his instinct started to like him. It was hard for him, though. He had been afraid for so long. He didn't know not to be. He had to learn, for Olivia's sake. The first night driving home in the car with Brutus, he was so scared and nervous his shirt clung to his sweat-soaked frame. He kept expecting those drops to climb around his neck while he drove. It was stupid. He knew it. But the image was so strong he thought for sure it would happen. He couldn't wait to get out of the car. They stopped for the supplies and Harry volunteered to go in and get them. Out of sight of Olivia, he stood inside the door, breathing it through the mouth and out through his nose. A technique he read about reduce anxiety and return his heart rate to normal. It had been useful to him ever since he quit drinking. It would get used to Brutus. Olivia smiled more, and the tension would draw her shoulders up around her, and her head grew less pronounced. As dogs went, Brutus was remarkable. Brutus possessed an almost human awareness of the discomfort and respected it. Harry anticipated that one day Olivia would have the courage to leave the house without him. As long as she took Brutus with her, of course, he hoped she would someday continue to getting her education. She could take online courses and complete university that way, get a degree with never leaving the house if she wanted to. She could get on with her life and maybe heal from the cruel interpretation. She wished they caught the bastard jackal. Maybe Olivia would be as scared of the night or strange noises if she knew he was in jail. Detective Davis believed that it would make another appearance, especially after carving Jen so she would resemble Olivia. What was the connection to Olivia? Why was she so special to the sick bastard? He wished he had some idea, even with an inkling of why. With a shadow and overhanging presence, would Olivia ever have a normal life? What if he came for her? Would Harry be able to protect her, and would he end up another victim? Like Jen to her mother. Isn't it fair or Olivia to live this way? It wasn't fair for either to have taken. He sighed. Life was indifferent to fairness. It had been taking a long time for Harry to learn that. All a person could do is try to be prepared. But now objection had been violent and unpredictable. He sighed, watching Olivia sit out back. Brutus lying on the side, her hand absently scratching him to stop on his head. He tried an alarm around her neck, and the house alarm and the video cameras, her knife, and now Brutus and the yard dog. She should be safe. Summer arrived in July. According to the calendar, the first day of summer is supposed to be June 21st. The weather did not acknowledge the calendar and reminded the relatively cool until halfway through July. When the typical Canadian fashion it got hot, people complaining and forgot a short time ago they were whining about the cold and bitter winter. Olivia had never complained about the summer heat. For her, the hotter the better. She preferred refused to turn on the air conditioner, even if the breathing caused her to sweat. Harry would inevitably arrive home, moan about the heat, and the hum of the AC would begin before she completed his complaint. To Olivia, summer lasted only for a blink before the cold air swooped down in the north and reminded everyone that, yes, they lived in Canada. Olivia decided to take advantage of the weather and spent most of their time outside, soaking in the sun, reading a book and music emanated to the windows of the house. The first summer in 5 years she could spend outside. She wouldn't waste it. Frank and Carl visited the renovations. It took longer than both of them expected. Wood rot ravaged the house. They had to replace their closet and their daylight. It was considerably bigger than before. Olivia invited them both over for dinner to thank you. Carl accepted. Frank declined, citing the workland had built up while he worked for them for free. He had never tried to work. Reminded her and Harry that he was renovating their house for free. They were done, and she felt relief, no longer than them around. She enjoyed being alone and thought she might be turning into a hermit. Do hermits live with their dads? Their routine consisted of getting up and Harry eating breakfast with them after feeding Brutus, quietly enjoying the rising sun brightening the windows. After he left, he would set alarms, monitor doors and windows, check the same windows manually, and review the video of the previous night. Then she would catch up with some news, hoping to hear the jackal was either dead or caught, preferably dead, torn apart by a pack of ravenous dogs, or some irony of it, and an intense pain he would experience before he died. She checked every day, although she knew Davis would let her know before the news people did. Once the news failed to relate the horrible death of the jackal, she would make her tea, iPad and book onto the backyard with her, Brutus tongue lolling and walking beside her. Some days after tea, she would mow the yard and pluck vile dandelions. After she picked up dog crap, of course, she moved her over her droppings before, and she had to spray it with exhausted brown haze, and the accompanying smell added tasting bile. She preferred never to do that again. Other days she would zone out her book until she would need a break and then toss the ball to Brutus. She kept the knife at her hip, attached to the belt in her shorts, continued to pat it on times in nervous contemplation. She thought of Lucy often. She had Lucy's phone number. Davis had given it to her a long time ago with a business card. The card had sat ignored in the stand behind her bed. What did Lucy think of what happened to Jen? Did she hunker down at the sight after she heard about it? She didn't seem the type to lie low. The hazy, lazy days removed any urgency to call Lucy, and she kept putting it off. The summer lodging was too nice and lousy to stressful conversation on the jackal. She wanted to move ahead and leave all the memories behind. That would be easier to do if the jackal wasn't still out there. Besides, Lucy didn't feel the need to call Olivia. Olivia sighed under the heat, the sun pressing down on her with her heavy hand induced to the delightful indolence. Brutus suffered a heat and be near her, and she had felt bad about it. His tongue grew long out of his mouth, and his panting took on a hectic cadence. She had Harry bring home one of those little turtle pools, and she placed it at the end of the deck, filled it with water. Brutus showed how grateful he was by hopping into it and lying down. He submerged his face in it, and he would take his pink tongue darting out of the lap of the water. Once satisfied, he hopped out, made sure the pad near the before, shaking the water off, as though wanting to share the refreshing glory of the pool. Brutus alternated between prowling the yard, dunking himself in the pool, and napping beside her. She loved the mutt, and could see her dad warming up to him, taking incriminatingly tiny steps forward. One day he may even summon the courage to pet Brutus. The sun's arc crept up another half of the sky. Olivia, realizing the afternoon had arrived, and hadn't eaten lunch, summoned the energy to do so, approaching. September loomed over before her. The days had passed in a blur, and there was still no end in sight of the investigation and identity of Jackal. How long would he have to hide outside the world? Should she be more eager to go out and join if the Jackal was caught dead? And hard to answer. She liked to think, but she would always have a fear, irrational or not, of being snatched off the street and disappearing. It happened so quickly the first time. Rude eye opener to realize how helpless a person could be surprised superior strength. She patted the knife at her waist. Brutus' claws clacked on the floor behind her. She opened the fridge, turned her thoughts towards something more productive like lunch. She sang along with the iPod, content for the moment. She patted Brutus on the head, removed cheese from the fridge. Crackers and cheese, plus lemonade. Delish. For the moment, she felt safe. Chapter 32. The Jackal packed a white paneled van and the gear he would need. He stole it from work site, and being Saturday, he figured no one would notice or report it missing until Monday morning, and only if they happened to need that particular van, so he had a good window of the van being safe to use. He liked the camouflage the white work van afforded. It aroused no suspicion. They were common on the road and seagulls are at the beach. Not even the cops would pay him much attention. He could leave the police still sat there, day after day. It must be costing them a fortune. He thought of himself as a patient and malicious man, and as such, going after them without police watching was a bad idea. Going after them with the police watching was a damn near suicidal. He should leave both of the girls alone and move on, or at least wait until the police would go away. He always believed himself capable of controlling himself enough to be able to move on without backwards glance. He would be able to play it smart and just quit. He had his fun, years of it. No good things ever last. He couldn't let go. The very idea he could was a lie. It made him wonder who was in control, him or Olivia. He had read of a convicted serial killers, a repeating theme of them being caught when they were victims of their own laziness, competency, and arrogance. A dangerous mixture. The Jackal didn't believe this affliction could be called laziness. No, the danger in him lived and breathed and called him out of a room. Olivia was the danger. He couldn't stop thinking of her. He couldn't stop wanting her. It was a drug addicts go through, attracted to being needed something clearly harmful to them. He even scoffed at him. Once upon a time, but no longer. He was decided. Tonight was the night his torment would end. He would have both his prizes, spirit them away as the police supposedly watched her from their cars. He went inside this house, and one of the family didn't know about, and ate a steak dinner. The steak was good, but it didn't compare to the flesh of his ladies. Terror added to the distinct flavor of flesh. He would taste it again soon enough. After he washed the dishes by hand, dried them, and put them away, he ambled to the back porch with a glass of lemonade. Ave Maria on repeat played in the background. It was their song, his and Olivia's. He sank into the outdoor recliner. The sun drifted towards the earth. This is what Olivia liked to do, sitting on the backyard with the sun and warm companion. He liked it too, because it helped him feel close to her. It's what she had done all summer, and he had to admit it was peaceful. Stars dotting the darkening sides. Finished his lemonade, and Jackal stood, made ready to leave. Tonight, he would be reunited with his lovelies. Joy tempered his temptation. The Jackal anticipated his unforgettable night. And that's the end of that. A scary, scary realization that even serial killers do human-like things like you and me. Well, with that out of the way, actually, I think that's a pretty good lesson there. About, like, serial killers. Is people always see serial killers as like these horrible, horrible people, but in the end of the day, they're people. Like, I'm not trying to defend them. It's just, it's the truth. It could be any one of us. So I guess the lesson is stay on your toes. It's a pretty bad lesson, sure, but you know what? It's a lesson. Call it as you may. Anyway, today we have read. Chapters 27 to 32. By the way, if you're wondering why it sounds like I'm in a different tone of voice, it's because I am. It is the next day for me in real life. It didn't take me that long for this chapter. I just lost track of time. Anyways, we read tomorrow we're going to read pages 33 to 38, of course. No, that's chapters 33 to 38, you silly. And we're reading pages 163 to 183, so another relatively easy episode. But yeah, I hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. People like, be efficient, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!